Chapter 1, Principal Davies, I'd like to apply for a transfer from Yuncheng back to Beijing. A surprised voice immediately came from the other end of the phone. Back to Beijing? What about Dawa Doran? Don't you like him a great deal? Today is his ceremony to return to secular life. After that, you two will have a chance to be together. A chance to be together? Clara Gable fell silent for a moment, not answering immediately, but gazing into the distance. Amidst red walls and white tiles at an elevation of over 12,000 feet, incense burned brightly, and the sound of chanting was melodious. Before the solemn Buddhist statue, Dawa Doran, dressed in a deep red monk's robe, knelt on a meditation cushion, hands clasped. His aloof, god-like back couldn't help but draw everyone's attention. He publicly surrendered his monk's certificate and belongings, changed his attire, and announced he would resume using his lay name. Seeing the ceremony to return to secular life had concluded, Dawa Doran slowly walked over to a bright and beautiful girl with twin plates. He stood tall and elegant, his entire being exuding an air of cold reverence. Yet when facing the girl before him, his cool voice held a trace of gentleness. "Sandra, this is for you." A 5-colored woven bracelet, made by his own hands, was presented to Sandra Summers, but it deeply stung Clara's eyes. In Yuncheng, a 5-colored woven bracelet signified sincere affection. Young men and women exchanged them, generally to express love. Clara forced a slight smile, her heart filled with bitterness. She whispered, "A deity doesn't descend from their pedestal. Even if he did, it wouldn't be for me. Principal Davies, this is a decision I've made after long consideration. Please approve my application." Hearing the determination in her voice, Principal Davies sighed deeply. "Clara, you've been on this teaching assignment for 3 years, and you've been excellent in every aspect. I really can't bear to see you go. But if you're set on leaving, I can't stop you. I'll get your paperwork processed within the next 2 weeks." After hanging up, Clara instantly let out a sigh of relief, feeling as though a great weight had finally been lifted from her heart. She forced herself not to look at that scene again and silently walked away. So, it had already been 3 years. She gazed into the distance. The azure sky seemed capable of carrying away all troubles. She remembered the year she had just been assigned to teach here. The weather had been just as fine. Under a sky full of fluttering 5-colored prayer flags, Dawa Doran, clad in pure white robes, had ridden past on a white horse, an astonishingly beautiful sight. His deep eyes were cool yet compassionate, and a red mole at the center of his forehead added a divine touch. A perfect ray of sunlight struck his face, like a Buddha's halo. In that moment, Clara thought she heard the faint sound of Buddhist chants. The pure white made him seem even more ethereal, and the imposing aura around him set him apart from everyone else. With just a glance from afar, Clara's heart pounded like thunder, threatening to leap out of her throat. In that instant, she knew clearly she had fallen for him. His face haunted her thoughts, lingering in her mind. It wasn't until later, at a ceremony, that she learned his identity. Dawa Doran had entered the monastery to practice since childhood and had never been involved with women. All the young women on the grasslands silently admired him, but none dared to profane him. Only Clara was bold. After confirming her feelings, she never hid her affection. She constantly chased after Dawa Doran, making her love for him known to everyone. She tried every trick in the book, even remaining in Yuncheng willingly for 3 full years, unwilling to return, all for him. But every time she expressed her feelings, he, like a god detached from worldly desires, would have eyes as cool as water, yet faintly hinting at infinite tolerance. He would only continue to turn the prayer beads in his hand, his voice coolly rejecting her. "I will not love anyone, nor can I." However, whenever Clara sought him out, he would patiently teach her the local dialect, help her communicate with students, and even risk his life to protect her during a wolf attack. She had asked Dawa Doran hundreds of times if he could return to secular life. But he always just twirled his prayer beads and remained silent. Until a few days ago, when news of his intention to return to secular life arrived, she was ecstatic, even excitedly wondering if he had finally developed feelings for her. So that day, filled with excitement and joy, she ran to see him after class. Only to see a pretty and charming young woman buried tightly in his embrace, her tone filled with inexpressible joy. "Thank you for returning to secular life for me, Dawa. Dawa, meaning older brother or cousin in this context. That day, Clara learned the girl's identity from others. Her name was Sandra Summers. She was Dawa Doran's neighbor and younger cousin. They had known each other since childhood. Sandra had been studying at a university elsewhere and had only returned after graduating. And Dawa Doran's reason for returning to secular life was simply because Sandra had returned, and her mother, Mrs. Summers, was planning to arrange her marriage. Clara found it hard to believe for a moment. She hadn't expected the cool and ethereal Dawa Doran to experience such feelings, akin to jealousy. She had been deceiving herself, convincing herself over and over that perhaps Dawa Doran's feelings for Sandra were merely those of an older brother for a younger sister. Until today, when she witnessed Dawa Doran giving the 5-colored woven bracelet to Sandra. At this moment, she could no longer deceive herself. A god loves all of humanity, so he would be kind to her. But as Dawa Doran, he only loved Sandra. So, Clara found peace with it. After 3 years of obsessive pursuit, today, she finally gave up on loving him. And she decided to leave him completely. Chapter 2, Clara, Sis. Clara Gable was walking to school alone when she was suddenly called out. A clear voice reached her ears, and she instinctively looked behind her, only to have her arm taken by an enthusiastic Sandra Summers. "Clara, I'm going to start teaching at the school in a few days. Do you have any experience you can share with me?" At the same time, Dawa Doran was also walking towards them. He glanced at her faintly, his voice as cool as ever. "Sandra can be a bit flighty. You'll need to guide her a bit when she's at school, otherwise, I'm afraid she'll just play with the children and forget her teaching duties." Sandra's face instantly flushed red, and she retorted angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. When have I ever done that?" Clara's body trembled slightly. It was the first time she had seen him with such an expression. Though still as cold as the enduring snow on a high mountain, a closer look revealed a hint of tenderness and indulgence. She remembered how, after arriving here and meeting him, she too had always pestered him for help. He, however, always maintained an expression as still as an old well. It was as if nothing she did could sway him in the slightest. But the more it was like this, the more Clara wanted to pull him down from his pedestal. Once, when Dawa Doran was asleep, she had secretly traced the outline of his eyebrows and eyes in the air with her hand. She had wondered what it would be like if that face looked at her with a gentle expression. Then she had shaken her head with a wry smile, thinking that given his nature, she would probably never see it in her lifetime. Now Clara had seen it, as she wished, but it was because of Sandra. She controlled her emotions, her smile strained. "Sorry, perhaps another teacher should guide her. I'll be in a little while," leaving. Before she could finish her sentence, Tricia Mills came to call them. "Miss Gable, Sandra, Dawa, come to the beef and mutton feast tonight." Dawa Doran nodded, and Sandra also agreed with a smile. Then his gaze once again fell on Clara, his eyes filled with a moon-like compassion. "What were you about to say?" Clara smiled bitterly and shook her head. "Nothing." Sandra said enthusiastically, "Clara, come with us to the feast. It's going to be amazing tonight. We won't go home until we're drunk." Clara smiled, not wanting to disturb their time together, and declined, "No, thanks. I still have things to do at school. I can't make it. You two have a good time tonight." "Oh, all right then," Sandra said, disappointed. "Then you must come next time." Clara neither nodded nor replied, but Sandra took her silence as agreement and continued to smile happily. Dawa Doran gave Clara a rare, longer look. After all, if it were before, she would never have refused such an opportunity to be alone with him. She would have stayed by his side, chattering away with questions, like a little sun that never stopped revolving around him, always with endless things to say. This was the first time he had seen her like this. But Dawa Doran didn't dwell on it, simply letting Sandra pull him away. Watching the tall and short figures depart, Clara silently thought they really did look good together. After returning to the school, Clara cleared her mind of all distracting thoughts and prepared for the handover of her work with the school leadership. After submitting the application materials for her transfer back to Beijing, she returned to the teacher's dormitory and, as always, organized her lesson plans. On her desk were some scriptures she had hand-copied for Dawa Doran, and notes she had written while learning to make butter tea and brew barley wine in order to integrate into the local culture and get closer to him. She used to look through them often, but now that she was leaving, there was no need to keep them. So Clara organized the notes and gave them to the teachers who had come to teach with her. Miss Taylor and Miss Lawson were very surprised and delighted when they saw the notes. "Miss Gable, these are treasures. Are you sure you want to give them to us?" Clara smiled. "I'm leaving soon. They're no use to me anymore. I hope they can be put to good use." The next day, she took the thick stack of scriptures to the monastery to be burned. The butter lamps in the hall burned eternally, and a calming fragrance filled the air. Clara focused her mind. As a monk burned the stack of scriptures, she knelt before the Buddha statue, piously closing her eyes and murmuring, "May Buddha bless Dawa Doran with peace, joy, happiness, and fulfillment for the rest of his life, and may he be united with his beloved." Every prayer, every wish, had nothing to do with herself. After praying and making her wishes, Clara walked out of the monastery, only to accidentally hear Sandra's voice. "Dawa," she whined playfully, "what surprise did you hide here? I can't find it no matter how I look, just tell me you're being so mysterious." Even as she said this, Sandra didn't give up, craning her neck and searching. Clara instinctively turned her head, just in time to see Dawa Doran standing outside. Meeting those like cool eyes, for an instant she felt her heart skip a beat. Just then, Sandra finally found a surprise cloth bundle, quickly opened it, and discovered a red dress. "Wow, it's so beautiful, Dawa, I love it," she exclaimed in admiration, her eyes never leaving the dress, and quickly held it up against herself. "As long as you like it." Dawa Doran walked in, his expression as cool and distant as ever, but from his tone, one could inexplicably sense his good mood. Clara hadn't expected him to be the type to prepare surprises for people. It was always her preparing various surprises for him before, sometimes a snow-white garment, sometimes a prayer bracelet. But when he saw these, he would always twirl the prayer beads in his hand, not even smiling, just murmuring obscure scriptures. Yet now, he was actually doing such romantic things. It turned out that once the heart was moved, not even a god could escape the 7 emotions and 6 desires. "Dawa, this gift is perfect. It matches the bracelet you gave me a while ago so well." With that, Sandra took out a bracelet from her clothes and dangled it smilingly in front of Dawa Doran. Seeing that familiar bracelet, Clara felt a jolt in her heart. That was the one she had spent 3 days and nights weaving for him, yet he had given it to Sandra. Yes, perhaps the things she had given him before were just troubles for him. No wonder she had never seen him use them. Perhaps most were thrown away. Maybe this was the only one he considered somewhat decent, so he gave it to the girl he loved. She laughed self-mockingly, preparing to leave. Chapter 3. Suddenly, Sandra, not far away, saw her and quickly ran over to take her arm. "Clara, sis, what are you doing here?" She forcibly suppressed the emotions in her heart and smiled faintly. "I came here to burn scriptures and pray for blessings." Upon hearing this, everyone's gaze fell on the pile of scriptures on the ground that had not yet finished burning. Clara and Sandra's expressions remained unchanged, but Dawa Doran's cool eyes flashed with an unusual emotion, and he couldn't help but look at Clara again. What had been wrong with her lately? She clearly treasured these scriptures, only because he had left annotations on them. She protected them meticulously every day, yet now she had suddenly burned them all. Sandra's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Clara, did you know? Not only are the prayers here effective, but drawing fortune sticks is the most effective of all." As soon as she finished speaking, she took one hand of each, pulling Clara and Dawa Doran inside to draw fortune sticks. Dawa Doran's thin lips moved slightly. Seeming to sense he was about to refuse, Sandra quickly cajoled. "Dawa, you've always interpreted fortunes for others. This time, draw one for yourself too." Hearing this, Dawa Doran's lips curved upwards, and he agreed with a helpless expression. He knelt piously before the Buddha statue, circled the fortune stick container 3 times around the incense burner to convey his intentions. A fortune slip fell out, like a phoenix flown from its high tower, and clouds obscuring a lover's mountain. It was a most unfortunate lot, signifying that the one you love will depart, choose another, and be lost to you forever. For a moment, Dawa Doran's face turned a little grim, and he subconsciously glanced at Clara. "What's wrong?" Sandra tilted her head and looked at him. "Nothing." Dawa Doran calmly put away the fortune slip. Clara, being close, had already seen the fortune slip in his hand but said nothing. She thought he must be worried about Sandra. Worried that Sandra would leave him? But how could that be? They were in perfect harmony right now. Just then, Sandra also drew a fortune, her face beaming with smiles. It was clearly a good one. She looked at Clara. "Clara, sis, it's your turn." Clara immediately shook her head, lying. "I already drew one here just now, I won't draw again." Countless times before, the results had been bad. This time would surely be the same. She didn't want to humiliate herself again. "Oh, I see. All right then." Sandra smiled innocently, not overthinking it or insisting. After parting ways with Sandra and Dawa Doran, Clara returned to the school alone and continued teaching her remaining classes, until the local festival arrived and the school went on holiday. On the day of the festival, Sandra's silver bell laugh could be heard from afar. "Dawa, now that you've returned to secular life, for the first time you don't have to participate in those Buddha displaying ceremonies. You should have some fun and enjoy yourself. Let's go with Clara." "Clara, sis, let's go have fun together." Clara walked out of the classroom and saw Sandra standing outside, beaming with Dawa Doran beside her. Seeing this scene, she froze for a moment. In the past 3 years, it had always been her taking the initiative to find Dawa Doran. He had never once come to find her. But since Sandra's return, the probability of seeing him had greatly increased. Yet, she no longer felt the same joy as before, because she had already given up on loving him. So she paused, about to decline their invitation. But Sandra, as if anticipating what she was going to say, persistently pulled her hand. "Clara, you rejected me last time, you can't reject me again this time. On such a wonderful festival, we should go out and have fun together. Let's go," saying this, Sandra pulled Clara outwards. Unable to resist her coaxing, Clara sighed helplessly and had to agree. In the park, colorful tents were set up on the grass, with mats and carpets spread on the ground, laden with various wines, drinks, and dishes. Everyone, dressed in vibrant ethnic costumes, gathered to sing, dance, drink, and make merry. Sandra pulled her directly into the crowd, and they joined hands with everyone to dance. After playing for a while, Clara's energy was depleted, so she sat down on a nearby carpet to rest. Sandra, however, seemed to have inexhaustible energy. After playing by herself for a while, it wasn't enough, so she took Dawa Doran's hand and led him into the crowd. The two danced to the music, as if the sunlight particularly favored them, its golden rays sprinkled on their cheeks, making them look like spirits of the mountains and fields. A truly well-matched pair. Clara subconsciously picked up the barley wine beside her and drank it slowly, her head lowered. Suddenly, an accident occurred. As Sandra danced, she accidentally took a wrong step and nearly tripped herself. Dawa Doran's expression changed slightly, and he quickly protected her. The two embraced and fell onto the lawn together. Sandra, however, burst into hearty laughter, not feeling embarrassed at all. But Dawa Doran suddenly looked towards me. Meeting his eyes, as cool as moonlight, she instinctively averted her gaze, hurriedly took several large gulps of wine, and lowered her head to count the blades of grass on the ground. She didn't know how many bowls of wine she had drunk. She only felt her reactions growing slower and her vision blurring. She was drunk and didn't want to disturb them any longer. So Clara managed to prop herself up, swayed a few times, and prepared to leave. Her legs were soft, as if stepping on clouds. She forced herself to shake her head, trying to stay sober, and continued walking forward. But accidentally, she stumbled into a cool, crisp embrace. Clara smelled the familiar scent and subconsciously looked up. Dawa Doran's cool voice fell into her ears. "Where are you going? I'll take you back." She froze, remembering the countless times she had sat on Dawa Doran's horse. Back then, his body always kept a distance from hers, but she had secretly measured it, thinking she had to work harder, shorten it little by little, until she achieved 0 distance with him. Now she wouldn't be so shameless, and she already understood his feelings. Clara pushed away a little distance, shaking her dizzy head. "No need, Sandra will misunderstand." Dawa Doran frowned slightly. "Misunderstand what? What does it have to do with Sandra?" Clara didn't answer further. Her fair cheeks were slightly flushed. Perhaps it was the drunkenness that caused her brain to momentarily freeze. Some words couldn't help but slip out. "Dawa Doran, you can't take me where I'm going next, and we won't see each other again." She looked up at him, her dark eyes seeming to glisten with moisture. Hearing this, Dawa Doran's grip on Clara's hand suddenly tightened. "What do you mean?" Chapter 4. Before Clara Gable could answer, Sandra Summers walked over. "Is Clara, sis, drunk? Let's go back." Clara quickly pulled her hand away, retreating from Dawa Doran's embrace, and waved at them. "I can go back by myself. You two go back together." As soon as she finished speaking, she stumbled back. Dawa Doran watched her retreating figure, his eyes deep, as if lost in thought. When Clara woke up the next day, she felt a throbbing pain in her head. Knock, knock. Sandra knocked on her door and peeked her head in. "Clara sis, are you feeling better? There's an opera performance today. I also brought you lots of yogurt." As she spoke, she shook the several glass bottles of yogurt in her hand. Clara didn't understand why Sandra was so enthusiastic towards her. If Sandra had heard about her pursuit of Dawa Doran, shouldn't she be somewhat distant? She instinctively wanted to refuse, but then Dawa Doran appeared behind Sandra. "Sandra likes you very much. Don't always refuse her." Clara forced a bitter smile and could only let Sandra lead her out to have fun. The performance, with performers in colorful clothes and masks, was very popular. Many locals and tourists crowded around to watch. Countless enthusiastic people kept squeezing forward, all wanting to get a closer view of the performance. As they walked, she didn't know who let go first, but the crowd separated Clara from Sandra and Dawa Doran. At that moment, Dawa Doran immediately grasped Sandra's hand tightly, preventing her from being bumped. He even held her in his arms, using his broad, strong body to shield her from all harm. His tall, handsome features were striking, easily visible in the crowd. Clara, however, was submerged by the crowd, pushed further and further away, squeezed out of the throng, and fell sharply to the ground. Some of the surging people were so focused on the performance that they didn't even see someone fall at their feet. Clara was stepped on several times, her hand and arm were trampled. The piercing pain almost made her faint. However, at that moment, a rather inconspicuous earring on the ground caught her eye. It was Dawa Doran's turquoise earring. He used to treasure it greatly. Once, it was lost in a heavy snow, and Clara saw him lose control for the first time. That time, he ran out alone and searched for it for a whole day and night. Thinking of this, Clara, ignoring the pain in her body, stretched out her hand, trying to reach the earring. Just a little bit more. One person after another stepped on her hand. After who knows how long of effort, she finally managed to pick up the earring. At last, Clara stood up and managed to squeeze out of the crowd, only to see Dawa Doran lifting Sandra up, placing her outside the crowd, and checking if she was hurt. Clara hesitated for a moment, then walked over and placed the turquoise earring in her hand before him. "Your earring fell. I found it, here you go." She endured the pain in her body, not mentioning her injuries at all. The handmade turquoise earring, though seemingly plain, was deeply valued by him. Only then did Dawa Doran subconsciously touch his own ear, realizing it was missing. He quickly raised his hand to take it, a rare expression of relief at recovering something lost appearing on his cool face. His eyes were fixed only on the earring. He didn't even notice Clara's injuries. Chapter 5. When Sandra Summers saw the earring, she also breathed a sigh of relief. "I didn't expect Clara to find it. I gave this to Dawa a long time ago. He always wears it and was very anxious when he lost it just now. I even told him if it's lost, it's lost. It's not important, it's just an earring. I can give him a new one later." If I hadn't pretended my leg hurt, he probably would have rushed in to find it. Luckily, you found it. Hearing this, Dawa Doran put the earring back on, his gaze profound as he said, "A gift from you is very important." Clara Gable bit her lip uneasily, her face somewhat pale. Previously, she only knew Dawa Doran valued it greatly. She had thought he liked this type, so she specially asked someone to buy turquoise and painstakingly crafted one for him. After he accepted it, he only politely thanked her. But she had never seen him take off this particular earring. At the time, she had only assumed he was reluctant to wear what she had given him. Thinking back now, it must have been that he was simply reluctant to replace what Sandra had given him. Clara suppressed the sourness in her heart, sighed deeply, and forced a smile. "Sandra, I'm tired. I want to go back and rest. I had a great time today, thank you for the invitation. You guys continue playing." Seeing her say this, Dawa Doran and Sandra didn't try to stop her. After returning to the teacher's dormitory, Clara found some medicinal wine. Rolling up her sleeves, she saw that both her arms and the backs of her hands were a mess of bruises, with a large patch of skin even scraped off. It looked shocking. She gritted her teeth, poured medicinal wine into her palm, and massaged it in circles to disperse the clotted blood. After applying the medicine, Clara spent the next few days packing the things she would take with her. She was leaving soon. Many of her classes had gradually stopped, handed over to other teachers. Her desk was almost empty, with only some paintings left that she didn't plan to take. These were paintings she had done during her 3 years here. Some were colored pencil landscapes, some were portrait sketches. As she was about to leave, she decided to give these paintings to some friends, as a token of her gratitude for their help and care over the past 3 years. She went from door to door delivering the paintings, and many people were very surprised and grateful. They expressed their simple thanks to her in somewhat broken Mandarin. "Thank you, Miss Gable, I like it very much." Some people knew she was leaving and were very reluctant to see her go. "Miss Gable, we all like you very much. Can't you stay a little longer? There are still so many scenic spots we haven't shown you." Clara smiled helplessly and shook her head. "My mission here is complete. Other teachers will come after me. My parents are getting older too. It's time for me to go back and accompany them, go on blind dates, get married, and set their minds at ease." Hearing this, the crowd fell silent for a moment. A wave of sadness spread among them. Someone quietly mentioned Dawa Doran. "Miss Gable, what about Dawa Doran? Do you really not like him anymore? Can't you for him stay?" The last word remained unsaid, but everyone knew what he meant. For a moment, a flicker of anticipation lit up their eyes. Clara, however, shook her head with a sense of release. "I don't like him anymore. I shouldn't have liked him in the first place." The crowd looked at each other, all feeling somewhat helpless. A few people persistently asked, "Does Dawa Doran know you're leaving? What if he knows, and what if he doesn't?" Clara's voice was incredibly soft, making it hard to tell if it was reluctance or resignation. "If he knew, he probably wouldn't care. These 3 years, I've been troubling him. I hope he'll be well in the future, and I will be too." The crowd fell completely silent, no longer insisting on persuading her. Chapter 6. After leaving the homes of various people, Clara Gable calculated the time and thought Sandra Summers should have started at the school by now. Classes were starting in a few days. She couldn't guide her personally, but she could give her the teaching notes she had compiled over the past 3 years. Some of the interaction experiences in them were things Clara had figured out bit by bit. Sandra should be able to use them too. Taking the teaching notes, Clara went to Sandra's house, only to find Dawa Doran there as well. She forced herself to look away from him and smiled at Sandra. "Sandra, these are for you. I hope you'll teach well at the school and nurture more outstanding students." Flipping through the thick stack of teaching notes, Sandra looked as if she had found a treasure, her eyes overflowing with surprise. "Are these really for me?" When Clara nodded, Sandra was so happy she almost jumped. "Thank you so much, Clara. Sis, I love them. This is just what I need." She praised them sincerely, and even Clara was infected by her smile. Sandra avidly flipped through the teaching notes. Suddenly, a sheet of drawing paper fell out. She quickly caught it and instinctively looked at it. It was a side profile of Dawa Doran. In the drawing, he was looking down slightly, sunlight falling on him, casting a golden glow around him. His usually cool eyes revealed a hint of compassion for all beings and seemed to hold a deep, irresolvable affection, as if looking at his beloved. "Wow, Clara, sis, is this a drawing of Dawa? It's beautiful. You draw so well, you must have poured a lot of emotion into it," Sandra exclaimed excitedly. "No," Clara replied modestly, her expression a little awkward, not daring to look up at Dawa Doran's reaction. She quickly took back the drawing, folded it, and put it in her pocket. Before she could say she wanted to leave, Sandra's eyes lit up and she grabbed her hand. "Clara, sis, you draw so well. Could you draw a picture of Dawa and me together? I can hang it at home and admire it all the time." After saying that, she seemed to remember something and quickly looked at Dawa Doran. "Dawa, I forgot. You don't like people drawing or photographing you, but I really want one. Can you make an exception for me just this once?" Dawa Doran pondered for a moment. He knew Clara's feelings for him, knew she wouldn't agree. So he said faintly, "Even if I agree, Miss Gable will also." "Okay, I'll draw for you." Before he could finish, who would have thought Clara would interrupt him? Pretending not to see the surprise in his eyes, she even helped Dawa Doran and Sandra choose their clothes. Sandra wore the red dress he had given her last time, and he wore an outfit of a similar style and color. When they changed into their clothes, they looked like a perfect couple. Let's go to the grasslands to paint. Clara took Dawa Doran and Sandra to sit amidst a large, romantic, and beautiful field of cosmos flowers and began to paint. The richly colored oil painting completely captured this dreamlike scene. After finishing, she hid a line of small Chinese characters in the painting. Dawa Doran, Sandra, may you live in harmony and be together forever. Only after Clara said the painting was finished did Sandra quickly run over. After a glance, she began to praise it profusely. Clara, sis, you're amazing. The painting is so lifelike. I look even better than in reality. I'm going to frame it and hang it at home to admire every day. Her gaze lingered on the painting until she noticed the hidden line of text. Just as she was about to get closer to look, Clara stopped her. Sandra, you can't look at this yet. You have to wait a few days. Sandra looked bewildered. Why do I have to wait a few days? Clara remained silent, just smiling faintly. Because only then would it have meaning. By then, she would be gone, and there would be no stumbling block between Sandra and Dawa Doran. They could be happy forever. Chapter 7. After giving them the painting, Clara Gable excused herself, saying she had something to do, and turned to leave. Sandra Summers didn't think much of it and happily carried the oil painting home. Dawa Doran followed her back, but his gaze lingered deeply on Clara's retreating figure. Was it his imagination? He always felt that she seemed to have changed a lot. Dawa, what are you looking at? Sandra asked, puzzled, and followed his line of sight. But no matter how she looked, there was nothing there. Only Clara was ahead. Dawa Doran retracted his gaze and said faintly, nothing. Thinking about her impending departure, Clara specially prepared red ceremonial scarves and hand-braided a pair of lover's knots, placing them in a box. She didn't know when they would get married, so she decided to prepare them in advance and give them as a gift before she left. A few days before her departure, it happened to coincide with the school's preparations for renovations, and Dawa Doran also came to help. Clara watched his busy figure, hesitating for a long time before finally clutching the gift box and walking up behind him. She wanted to take this opportunity to give him the gift and at the same time wish them well. Dawa, just as the words she had rehearsed hundreds of times in her mind were about to be spoken, Dawa Doran's phone suddenly rang. He put down what he was holding and answered the call. Dawa, I accidentally fell off my horse while riding. I can't walk now. Can you come find me? I don't want my mom to scold me. As soon as the call connected, Sandra's tearful voice came from the other end. Hearing Sandra's words, ripples appeared in Dawa Doran's usually calm eyes. He comforted her softly for a few moments. Just as he turned to rush over, he saw Clara in front of him. Is there something, Miss Gable? Dawa Doran looked at the gift box she was holding, unsure if it was for him. Clara met his gaze for a few moments, seeing the urgency in his eyes, the urgency to get to Sandra. So, the words that were on the tip of her tongue were swallowed back. It's nothing. She shook her head and put the gift box back. I'll go with you to find Sandra. I have medicine for sprains in my office. I can bring it to her. Clara quickly fetched the medicine and followed Dawa Doran to find Sandra. Sandra lay on the grass, unable to get up, but already starting to enjoy the scenery. A black horse beside her grazed quietly, keeping her company. Sandra, Clara called out. Upon hearing her, Sandra immediately tried to get up. Accidentally, she aggravated the injury on her foot and grimaced in pain. Clara, sis Dawa, you're here. Sandra was overjoyed and quickly waved at them. Dawa Doran strode over, picked Sandra up on his back and carried her back. Sandra lay in bed, moved her ankle, and tears welled up from the pain. She whimpered pitifully at Dawa Doran. Dawa, it hurts so much. I know, bear with it. Dawa Doran sat by her bed, his movements gentle, his gaze focused as he applied medicine for her. Clara stood to the side, feeling like an outsider. Not wanting to disturb them any longer, she silently walked out. Watching his gentle expression, she couldn't help but recall when her hand was injured. She had pestered him relentlessly, wanting him to help apply medicine, but he had distantly refused again and again, not even daring to look directly at her injury. At that time, Dawa Doran had only said, there are distinctions between men and women. It's not appropriate. Afterward, he had even specially found a female villager to apply medicine for her. At that time, Clara had only thought that he was just that kind of person. Unmoved by emotion, his heart forever devoted only to his Buddha. Thinking back now, it was simply because she wasn't the person he liked. Just as she returned to school, she ran into Principal Davies, who had come looking for her. "Miss Gable, all your paperwork has been processed. You can prepare to leave. Beijing is thousands of kilometers from Yuncheng. I hear you're going back for blind dates and marriage. You probably won't be coming back, and we don't know when we'll see each other again." As soon as he finished speaking, Principal Davies sighed sentimentally and gave Clara a reluctant hug. Clara smiled faintly and returned the hug. "Principal, if fate wills it, we will meet again." After bidding farewell to the principal, she returned to her teacher's dormitory and packed her luggage. After finally finishing packing, she looked at the gift box on the table that she hadn't been able to give, momentarily stumped. When would be a good time to give it? Knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on her door. The door opened, and it was Dawa Doran. Clara was somewhat surprised to see who was outside. This was the first time he had taken the initiative to come find her. She stepped aside to let him in. Seeing the room empty, with nothing left but a few suitcases in the center, Dawa Doran suddenly felt a tightness in his chest and subconsciously asked, "Where are you going?" Clara looked at him, hesitated for a long time in her heart, but still lied, "I'm changing dormitories, so I'm packing my things." Chapter 8. Dawa Doran wanted to ask more, but just then his phone rang. Sandra Summers was calling. "Dawa, did you convey my thanks to Clara, sis?" A natural tenderness appeared in his eyes as he spoke softly into the phone. "I'm about to thank her." Then, he looked at Clara Gable. "Miss Gable, your medicine was very effective. Sandra specifically asked me to thank you. It's just that the bottle of medicine might have to stay with Sandra. Her injury hasn't healed yet, she might still need to use it." Clara smiled understandingly. "It's okay, Sandra can have the medicine. The most important thing is that her injury heals. No need for thanks." Dawa Doran relayed the parts Sandra hadn't heard clearly to her over the phone, then continued, "If you're injured, just rest well. Don't worry about anything else, remember. Also, have you changed your dressing?" At the mention of changing the dressing, the other end of the line fell silent. No need to ask, she was afraid of the pain and wouldn't change it. Dawa Doran felt a momentary helplessness. While saying goodbye to Clara, he quickened his pace outwards. "Miss Gable, I have something else to do, so I'll be leaving first. Goodbye." So, the first time he came to her on his own initiative was still because of Sandra. Watching his departing back, Clara said goodbye to his retreating figure. Dawa Doran, goodbye forever. On the day of her departure, Clara had just reached the outside of Sandra's house when she heard Mrs. Summers chatting. "Sandra's foot hurt so much last night, she cried for a long time. Thankfully, Dawa stayed by her bedside without leaving for a moment, coaxing her like when they were little, applying medicine and massaging it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known what to do." Seeing Clara arrive, Mrs. Summers immediately invited her in warmly. "Miss Gable must be here to see Sandra. She's in this room." She followed the directions towards Sandra's room. Inwardly, she rehearsed her farewell words and the scene of presenting the gift. However, just as she reached Sandra's door, she saw Sandra sleeping soundly on the bed, her eyes still red-rimmed. Dawa Doran was holding her hand, slumped beside her bed, asleep. There were distinct dark circles under his eyes, clear signs of having stayed up all night. Seeing this, Clara lightened her steps and retreated a few paces. She wouldn't disturb them. She didn't make a sound, placed the gift box at Sandra's door, and silently left. Meanwhile, the car to pick her up had already arrived at the school gate. Clara, carrying her suitcase, got into the car. The red walls of the school outside the car window seemed deeply etched in her mind, a touch of reluctance rising in her heart. "Let's go," Clara spoke softly, and the driver started the car. But they had only driven a few steps when countless locals suddenly swarmed in front of the car, holding white ceremonial scarves in their hands. "Miss Gable, Miss Gable," they had all come to see her off. Clara was overwhelmed by the gesture and quickly got out of the car, accepting the scarves one by one. "Miss Gable, thank you for your help these past 3 years. We wish you a smooth journey ahead. Tashi Dalek." Meeting their sincere eyes, Clara couldn't help but feel her own eyes moisten. She tried her best to hold back her tears, smiled, and said goodbye. "Thank you, everyone. This place is wonderful. In the future, more teachers like me will come here. The flowers of education will bloom all over Yuncheng. Take care, everyone." Clara, adorned with countless white ceremonial scarves, carefully got back into the car, arranged them preciously, and then waved goodbye to them. As the car started moving forward, she took one last look at this place, then sent Dawa Doran a final message. Dawa Doran, I'm gone. Those 2 red ceremonial scarves and the pair of lovers' knots are gifts for you and Sandra. I wish you both everlasting happiness, year after year. The moment the message was successfully sent, Clara deleted Dawa Doran's and Sandra's contact information and left without any lingering attachment. Chapter 9. The car drove towards the airport. The moment Clara Gable boarded the plane, she completely put everything about Yuncheng behind her. At the same time, Dawa Doran's heart suddenly ached, and he woke abruptly from his sleep. Seeing Sandra Summers still sleeping soundly beside him, he tucked her in before getting up and walking out. At the doorway, he saw a familiar gift box. This gift box, he had seen it in Clara's hands. A few days ago, she had been holding this gift box. If things had gone as expected, she had intended to give it to him. But for some reason, she still hadn't given it. Dawa Doran picked up the box from the floor and carefully unwrapped it. Inside were 2 red ceremonial scarves and a pair of intricately woven lovers' knots. He knew that in Han Chinese culture, a pair of lovers' knots was often given to a couple in love. For some reason, a trace of panic welled up in his heart, as if something unforeseen had already happened. He subconsciously took out his phone, wanting to ask Clara what she meant by giving him this gift. There was an unread message from her on his phone. Upon opening it, he saw, Dawa Doran, I'm gone, and I've given up on loving you. Those 2 red ceremonial scarves and the pair of lovers' knots are gifts for you and Sandra. I wish you both everlasting happiness, year after year. In an instant, strong emotional fluctuations surged through his usually calm eyes. He pressed his lips tightly together, his eyes slightly lowered, making it impossible to discern the emotions within them. But the hand gripping the phone, tightening continuously, revealed his uneasy heart. He had clearly seen many people heartbroken by separation from their dearest loved ones. Each time, he could comfort them with Buddhist verses or heartfelt words to the best of his ability. But when such a thing befell him, he suddenly felt that words were so pale and powerless. He could soothe the restless souls of countless pilgrims, yet he could not calm his own wildly beating heart. A doctor cannot heal himself. Was Buddha also like this? Dawa Doran knew clearly that Buddha would not be like this, but he would. Therefore, he chose to return to secular life because he could not completely forsake the mortal world. Usually as calm as water, this was the first time he had been so sad as to lose his composure. Dawa Doran's eyes stared intently at the string of words, countless questions crossing his mind, seeking answers. How could she think of him and Sandra this way? They were just like brother and sister. The words, given up on loving you, though seemingly light, caused a dense pain to spread through his heart. There was some bewilderment in Dawa Doran's eyes. Had he done something wrong to disappoint her so much? He looked at the phone number on his screen, a number he had silently recited countless times, hesitated for a long time, and finally made up his mind to call. However, the phone rang for a long time, but no one answered. The words he had practiced countless times in his mind ultimately had no chance to be spoken. Dawa Doran walked out silently. He encountered Mrs. Summers but forgot to greet her. Mrs. Summers found it a bit strange. It was the first time he had been like this. However, looking at him, it was just that the aura around him had grown colder, as if no one could approach him. It seemed a little different from before, but she couldn't quite pinpoint what was different. Mrs. Summers thought about it with confusion, but still couldn't figure it out, so she went in to check on Sandra. Chapter 10. Dawa Doran clutched the gift box from Clara Gable tightly to his chest and subconsciously walked towards the teacher's dormitory. Knock, knock. He stood at the door in silence for a long time before finally knocking. He waited for a long while, but no one came to open the door. She had left. Where had she gone? Dawa Doran then realized he knew nothing about her whereabouts. Just then, Principal Davies happened to be walking by. Seeing him standing in front of Clara's dormitory, he was somewhat puzzled. Miss Gable has already left. Why are you still here waiting for her? Didn't you go to say goodbye to her? The principal had thought that, given their previous relationship, even if there would be no further connection, a farewell should still have taken place. Dawa Doran froze for a moment, then spoke succinctly. Where did she go? Didn't she just change dormitories? Although he asked this, his constantly trembling eyelashes betrayed his inner uncertainty. In fact, as soon as he saw that message, he had roughly guessed that Clara's talk of changing dormitories was just an excuse to put him off. Hearing this, Principal Davies' weathered face filled with embarrassment. He hesitated internally, unsure whether to tell the truth. Since Clara hadn't told him about returning to Beijing, it meant she didn't want him to know. It was just, this matter couldn't be hidden at all. Everyone knew that the gentle yet passionate Miss Gable had been transferred back to Beijing. As long as Dawa Doran asked around, he would find out. Principal Davies sighed deeply with resignation and told him anyway. Miss Gable left by car this morning. She should be on a plane back to Beijing by now. How could this be? Dawa Doran looked at the principal with disbelief, trying to confirm if what he said was true. However, the principal nodded and continued. There's no need for me to lie to you. Miss Gable is an excellent worker, and I didn't want her to leave either, but people have their own aspirations. She applied for the transfer more than half a month ago, on the day you returned to secular life. After speaking, he encouragingly patted Dawa Doran's shoulder before shaking his head, sighing, and leaving. Dawa Doran stood there, stunned, unable to believe what he had just heard for a moment. His eyes were filled with astonishment, and a bone-chilling cold gradually brewed within him. Why choose to leave on that day? He had already chosen to return to secular life. Could it be she saw what happened that day? Just as this question arose, his phone in his hand rang. Almost instantly, he subconsciously thought Clara was returning his call. However, opening his phone, he saw the caller ID was Felix Morgan. Dawa, is Sandra's injury still serious? Is she okay? Dawa Doran said coldly. She's fine, you can go see her. Hearing this, Felix felt slightly relieved. He then deliberately used the back door to sneak into Sandra's house to see her. At this moment, Sandra also happened to wake up. Seeing her boyfriend appear before her, she immediately threw herself into his arms. Felix, why did you only come now? It hurts so much, and you weren't here, no one to comfort me. Sandra, in her haste, pulled at her injured leg and immediately grimaced in pain. Felix, heartbroken, quickly comforted her and picked up the medicine bottle beside her. Haven't you changed your dressing today? Keep your voice down, don't let your mom find out. Sandra immediately covered her mouth and nodded. Chapter 11, Felix Morgan was Sandra Summers' boyfriend from university. Although both were from the Yuncheng region, his hometown was some distance from Yuncheng City. His hometown was at a higher altitude and sparsely populated. When Sandra had just returned home, Mrs. Summers planned to find a suitable local man for her to marry. Sandra, afraid her mother wouldn't approve, had kept her relationship with Felix a secret from her. Previously, she had even tried to use Dawa Doran as a cover, telling her mother, Dawa returned to secular life for me. She thought her mother would believe her and scold her, as her mother respected Dawa Doran so much. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Summers just smiled upon hearing this, immediately saw through her lie, and exposed her. Dawa Doran had long considered returning to secular life. It was only around the time Sandra returned that it was successively approved by the Assembly of Monks. But after this incident, Dawa Doran had a talk with Mrs. Summers, and she temporarily put aside arranging Sandra's marriage, though she didn't relent on the matter of Felix. Felix had finally come to see her. While Sandra's heart was filled with sweetness, she was also on edge, afraid her mother would suddenly come in and find out. She buried her face happily in Felix's embrace, their fingers intertwined. Their two hands, wearing identical 5-colored woven bracelets, rested closely together. Felix, I really love the 5-colored woven bracelet you gave me. If only you had given it to me in person that day. As Sandra spoke, a hint of grievance tinged her voice. Felix hugged her tighter in comfort. I wish it had been that way too, but I was busy with work then and couldn't make it. I could only mail it to Dawa to give to you for me. Saying this, he kissed Sandra's forehead and continued, but it's all good now. My family has agreed to us being together. As long as we convince your parents, we can get married. I will, she nodded. The two savored this moment of sweetness. Little did they know the pain and torment in Dawa Doran's heart at this time. He stood alone in the airport, walking aimlessly. He had lost count of how many calls he had made to Clara Gable, but she hadn't answered a single one. Countless messages had been sent, all showing, you are not yet a friend of this person. For a moment, he was at a loss as to what to do. He heard everyone say that Clara had returned to go on blind dates, get married, and be with her parents. She had already given up on loving him, but his heart had only just begun to beat for her. Should he go find her? Where would he find her? These were all unknowns. For Dawa Doran, he had never left home in his entire life. Even though he had learned countless things, he still felt an unknown fear towards the unfamiliar city of Beijing. Dawa Doran walked somewhat dejectedly. When it came to Clara, he had always been unable to control the situation, always at a loss. She was like an accident on his predetermined life path, like a blazing fire that suddenly burst into his sight. Unshakable, inescapable. His identity and faith constantly bound him, demanding he keep a distance from her, restraining him from letting his heart be moved. Countless times he had recited scriptures in his heart, just hoping his gaze would linger less on her. Buddha could alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings, but he alone could not save himself. Dawa Doran had always restrained himself, suppressed himself, pushed her away, yet his heart, uncontrolled by reason, beat wildly because of her arrival. Only he himself knew that from the very first sight of Clara, he had already been thrown into turmoil. Chapter 12. The monks had all noticed the change in him. The person who had always ineffably cool and detached would feel a sense of anticipatory joy for some time before Clara Gable's arrival. It was just that this joy was too hidden, so hidden that neither of the two protagonists noticed it in time. Even an iceberg would be melted by Clara's day after day warmth. Even she herself hadn't realized that he had, in fact, looked at her countless times with eyes full of deeply hidden tenderness. Watching another plane take off into the sky, Dawa Doran couldn't help but wonder, was it like this when she left? A touch of sorrow tinged his usually frosty face. His heart gradually sank to rock bottom. She had decided to give up on loving him, but he still had so many things he hadn't had a chance to say to her. He longed to tell her that he liked her too, but now, there was no chance. Dawa Doran returned home, lost in despair, unsure how he even got there. The boundless grasslands and the clear, vast sky seemed unable to alleviate the sorrow in his heart. The next day, Sandra Summers, beaming with excitement, was carried by Felix Morgan to find Dawa Doran. Dawa Felix was accidentally discovered by Mom yesterday. Unexpectedly, Mom wasn't angry and even agreed to us being together. We plan to get married soon. Her face was radiant with smiles, wanting to share her joy with Dawa Doran. He responded coolly, without any further reaction. He just sat cross-legged on the meditation cushion, eyes closed, twirling his prayer beads, continuing to chant obscure scriptures. Seeing this, Sandra's joyful mood gradually cooled. She asked tentatively, "Dawa, Felix and I have settled things. What about you and Clara, sis? When are you two getting married?" Hearing the name Clara, Dawa Doran instantly opened his eyes. Looking up at the compassionate Buddha statue, a deep sense of guilt arose in his heart. The fortune he drew at the temple that day was indeed very accurate, like a phoenix flown from its high tower and clouds obscuring a lover's mountain. He suddenly recited this fortune, his heart filled with despair. Could it be that he and Clara would truly, as the fortune foretold, she would leave him, choose another, and they would be forever parted? Hearing this abrupt sentence, Sandra also froze. Although she didn't understand the fortune, she could roughly sense Dawa Doran's dejected mood. Sandra and Felix exchanged a glance, and she quickly explained, "Dawa, a fortune is just a fortune. Han people believe in man proposes, God disposes, and man can conquer nature. Clara is Han. If you don't try, how can you be sure? If you don't know how to express your feelings, then I'll go and say it for you. I'll tell her for you." Saying this, Sandra pulled Felix and was about to walk out. Just then, Dawa Doran spoke up in time. "No need. She has already returned to Beijing. It's too late." Sandra and Felix both froze. "What? Clara, sis, returned to Beijing? How come we didn't know? I haven't even said goodbye to her, yet I wanted to invite her to my wedding with Felix." Sandra said anxiously, still somewhat disbelieving, wanting to go to the teacher's dormitory to see. Dawa Doran understood her confusion, so he took out Clara's gift box and said with difficulty, "She probably misunderstood you and me, that's why she sent us these." At the same time, he showed her the message. The glaring red exclamation mark said it all. Chapter 13, after reading it, Sandra Summers still tried to call and message Clara Gable. The same red exclamation mark and unreachable phones silently explained everything. Clara truly intended to let go of Dawa Doran. For a moment, Sandra fell silent. She never imagined that her closeness with Dawa Doran would be misunderstood by Clara. In reality, they were indeed related by blood, like brother and sister, though the blood tie was rather distant. However, their families were neighbors, which didn't affect their good relationship. All along, Sandra had assumed Clara knew, so she hadn't explained further. However, she hadn't expected Dawa Doran not to have clarified it before. Sandra was so anxious, she was on the verge of tears. She had never intended to ruin their relationship. So, she quickly tugged at Dawa Doran's sleeve, urging him repeatedly. Dawa, go find Clara, sis, you must explain the situation to her, tell her we're just like brother and sister, related by blood. If you don't even try once, how will you know she won't forgive you? She loves you so much. As long as the misunderstanding is cleared up, she'll definitely be with you. Sandra was so anxious she even started pushing Dawa Doran. Even Felix Morgan chimed in. Dawa, pursuing a girl requires initiative. If you never tell her your feelings, how will she know you're interested in her? I heard from Sandra that Clara was always the one pursuing you, and you kept pushing her away. It's normal for her to misunderstand. You need to go and explain things to her clearly and promptly. Clara, sis, has taken the initiative so many times. Just go find her once. Their words, like the tolling of a bell, completely cleared Dawa Doran's mind. Yes, why shouldn't he take the initiative for once? Okay. Dawa Doran's usually calm eyes, for the first time, sparkled with an unusual vitality. He had walked into a dead end, always thinking he shouldn't trouble her, that since she had decided to let go, he shouldn't pester her anymore. However, he had overlooked the mental and emotional torment Clara had endured along the way. No matter what, he should try for her sake at least once. Thus, after handing over some matters, Dawa Doran boarded a flight to Beijing. Even though he didn't know where exactly she was in Beijing, he went without hesitation. The Gable family home in Beijing. When Clara returned home, she was tightly embraced by Arthur and Alina Gable. Clara, you headstrong child, it's been 3 whole years, you only came back for a few days during the new year. Do you know how much we missed you? Alina Gable dabbed at her tears, constantly looking Clara up and down. Finally, she sighed, you've gotten so much thinner and a bit tanner. Now that you're finally back, you need to take good care of yourself. Saying this, Alina immediately went to the kitchen to bring out the chicken soup the housekeeper had simmered, ladling a bowl for Clara. Drinking the warm chicken soup, Clara couldn't help but feel tears welling up in her eyes. These past 3 years, she had indeed returned home too infrequently. Arthur Gable sat beside her and asked with concern, now that you're back, when do you plan to go to Yuncheng again? I'm not going anymore. I'll stay home with you from now on. Clara tried hard to suppress the sob in her voice. Arthur and Alina were somewhat taken aback, then exchanged a puzzled glance. Weren't you still pursuing that Dawa Doran? Could it be? Alina asked tentatively, afraid of touching a raw nerve. Chapter 14. Clara Gable wasn't always cheerful and sunny. When she first arrived in Yuncheng, she often called her parents in tears, unable to acclimatize. After getting used to it, she then became sad and heartbroken because of Dawa Doran. She wasn't made of iron. How could repeated rejections not hurt? It was just that she had been gritting her teeth and persevering. From her calls home, Arthur and Alina Gable had a rough understanding of what had happened between Clara and Dawa Doran. Asking this question now, they also felt somewhat apprehensive. Clara smiled with relief. Dad, Mom, I've already given up on liking him. Liking him was too bitter, too difficult. I couldn't hold on any longer. He also has someone he likes. It's time for me to give up. Hearing this, Arthur and Alina remained silent for a long time. After a while, Alina finally smiled with relief. That's right, if you really can't hold on, then give up as my daughter. There will naturally be plenty of people who like you. It's not like you have to have him alone. Mom will help you look around in a few days, find someone better from our circle, someone even more outstanding and better than that. Dawa Doran, Clara also nodded with a faint smile. Seeing her agree so readily, Alina felt a bit unaccustomed for a moment. But then she went out to chat with the wealthy ladies to see whose family had a son of suitable age to facilitate an introduction. Alina was a complete social butterfly. In just 2 short days, she had collected a stack of information on eligible young men. Clara, dear, these are the ones who are presentable and whose family backgrounds match ours. take a good look. I'm not asking you to choose right away, just to see if you can get past your own feelings. I'll choose carefully. Clara nodded and carefully looked through the files. Each one came with a personal resume. Clearly, Alina had gone to great lengths. Every one of them was packaged perfectly, but she always felt something was missing. What exactly was missing? Perhaps it was that little spark of attraction. Clara subconsciously recalled the first time she saw Dawa Doran. That breathtaking feeling, she couldn't forget it for a long time. But perhaps it was because that first impression was too profound that she couldn't let go. I said I was going to give up on him. Why am I thinking of him again? Clara muttered to herself with a wry smile, subconsciously shaking her head, trying to fling out all memories of him from her mind. Before she could pick someone, Alina ran over excitedly. Clara, I've found a very outstanding candidate for you. I heard he runs a large company, studied abroad, is handsome, and most importantly, has no previous dating experience, but his family is pressuring him to get married. I've arranged for you to meet him at a coffee shop tomorrow. Whether you get together or not is another matter. It's good to meet and make a new friend tomorrow. Alina rushed over, said her piece, and then rushed off again, not giving Clara any chance to refuse. The next second, her phone dinged. The address of the coffee shop had been sent to her. Clara smiled helplessly. Since it was already decided, what else could she do? She would just treat it as going out to relax. The next day, Clara changed into an elegant and appropriate black French dress, put on her makeup, and went to the appointed address in a pair of high heels. In the coffee shop, she sat at a table. After a few sips of her cappuccino, she couldn't drink anymore. The milk, transported multiple times in the city, was never as rich and delicious as the yak milk from the Yuncheng Plateau. Having gotten used to drinking yak milk, she now felt a bit unaccustomed. Chapter 15, Clara Gable idly stirred the coffee in her cup, subconsciously looking up at the sky. The sky was a bit gray and hazy, and even the air wasn't as fresh as on the Great Plains. Though she had grown up here, she had already become accustomed to life in Yuncheng. No one here would call her Miss Gable anymore. She was just Miss Gable, Clara Gable. Clara bit her lip, using the pain to remind herself that there was no need to think about anything related to Dawa Doran anymore. He had someone better and more suitable for him, and she would too. After waiting for a long time, well past the originally agreed time, the so-called blind date still hadn't arrived. Her patience finally exhausted, Clara was about to take a photo to inform Alina Gable of the situation and then leave. Just then, the coffee shop door was suddenly pushed open, and a man in a camel-colored coat arrived, looking travel-worn. Gold-rimmed glasses slightly concealed his deep-set eyes, giving him a somewhat gentle and refined appearance. The calm demeanor between his brows inexplicably made one feel well-disposed towards him. He was tall and upright, yet not frail. An oatmeal-colored inner shirt faintly outlined his lean and strong waist. "I'm sorry, I'm late." Harrison York's gaze swept around the shop and then settled on Clara. He strode over, sincerely apologizing. "Clara Gable, why is it you?" The moment he saw a familiar face, he was momentarily stunned. Even Clara herself hadn't expected that the person coming for a blind date with her today would be Harrison York. "Harrison York, it's you. Sit down first. Why are you here for a blind date too?" She was somewhat puzzled. In her understanding, someone as outstanding as Harrison York never lacked pursuers. They were high school classmates. He was the brightest science star of their entire grade, and Clara was no slouch either. She was the pearl of the liberal arts. Many people discussed their two names together, debating which of them was more formidable. Whether in terms of family background, appearance, or academic ability, the two were evenly matched. However, the two had never been together. This had even saddened many people. There was no shortage of admirers for Harrison York. Clara had personally witnessed him gently yet distantly rejecting a girl. A deep meaning flashed in Harrison York's eyes for a second. Then, based on the information he had received beforehand, he told Clara, "I've been busy with research and the company these past few years, and I've also been waiting for someone. My family is rushing me to get married, so I thought I'd come out and meet someone." His words were half truth, half false. Clara didn't discern it, only assuming he was telling the truth. She was completely unaware that Harrison York had snatched his friend's blind date opportunity to specifically meet her. Oh, then have you found the person you're waiting for? Perhaps today's blind date should end here. If you have someone you're waiting for, then let's forget it. Before she could finish, Harrison York quickly interrupted. Clara Gable, didn't you hear who I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for you. I've been waiting for you for a long time. I've waited for this day for a long time too, and I don't want to wait any longer. The usually gentle person revealed a hint of assertiveness, directly laying the answer out for Clara, leaving her no room to retreat. Hearing this, she stood there completely stunned. What? Her mind was a blank, feeling as if struck by lightning. Chapter 16. Harrison York just smiled gently and said firmly, Clara Gable, you heard me right. Back in high school, I was already curious about you. At first, it was just admiration, but countless instances of admiration accumulated into affection. When I found out our universities were in the same city, even very close, I was so happy and excited my heart almost leaped out. But I didn't expect that during 4 years of university, I deliberately created countless, accidental encounters with you, and you never noticed me. The day I was preparing to confess to you, I learned that you were going to Yuncheng as a volunteer teacher. At this point, he paused for a moment before continuing, Fate works in such mysterious ways. I knew you had someone you liked there, so I thought about letting go of this feeling and going abroad for further studies. Every day abroad, I seemed to be looking forward to meeting you again, but reason told me I couldn't disturb you. It wasn't until I returned to the country and learned that your mother was helping you screen blind date candidates that I volunteered and told her I wanted to have a blind date with you. Clara Gable looked him earnestly in the eye. In those amber eyes, she saw abundant gentleness and sincere love. For a moment, her heart was fiercely touched. Memories hidden deep within her gradually became clear. She knew he was at the neighboring university and had also marveled at their numerous accidental encounters. She had even entertained unrealistic fantasies, thinking he liked her, thinking it was fate that led them to meet again and again. But then she had sobered up. He hadn't confessed. What if it was just her wishful thinking? Afterward, she had completely suppressed that thought. She hadn't expected Harrison York to tell her so bluntly that there were no accidental encounters. Every meeting was deliberately orchestrated by him. It was she who was too slow, and he who hadn't been direct at the time. Too many twists of fate had given Harrison York the chance to speak the truth of those years. Clara hesitated. She didn't know how to respond to Harrison York. His affection was too intense. She felt she couldn't bear it. However, she hadn't expected that, while she was persistently loving one person, another person had been loving her all along. The rejections she faced with Dawa Doran had almost made her doubt herself. Now, Harrison York firmly told her that she too was someone who could be loved. Clara struggled with what kind of answer would be appropriate. Just then, Harrison York spoke first. Clara, you don't need to rush to give me an answer. We can slowly get to know each other, and then decide whether to accept this love. His eyes were gentle and tolerant, and his presence felt like a refreshing spring breeze. Unknowingly, her earlier hesitation and nervousness quietly subsided. Okay, let's give it a try, she said firmly, then quickly added, I've completely let go of him. No one would want to know that the person they are pursuing still has someone else in their heart. Only when the heart is completely empty can one love anew. Hearing Clara's words, Harrison York's pupils dilated slightly in a momentary daze, then his eyes crinkled into a smile. Even Clara almost melted in his smile. He seemed able to tolerate all her willfulness and little tempers, loving her wholeheartedly. Let's go for a walk together. Harrison York extended his broad palm towards Clara. Looking at the slender, well-defined hand before her, she smiled faintly and placed her own hand in his. All right, let's go for a walk. Chapter 17. After exchanging contact information and leaving the coffee shop, the two walked aimlessly. Unconsciously, they reached a shop selling ethnic handicrafts. Familiar crafts made Clara Gable feel as if she had returned to the highlands. Have you been to Yuncheng? The scenery there is beautiful, and the people are very genuine. If there's a chance, I'll take you there to see. It's the place closest to the sky. Just lying on the grassland looking at the sky, all worries seem to be forgotten. Mentioning Yuncheng, Clara's face was filled with nostalgia. Harrison York smiled faintly, his gaze never leaving her. Yes, if there's a chance, I'd like to go see it with you. Clara turned back and smiled at him. This is a small prayer wheel. People hold it and turn it slowly clockwise, with a devout belief, symbolizing the continuous progress of personal cultivation. Saying this, she picked up a prayer wheel and placed it in Harrison York's hand, holding his hand and turning it slowly and evenly clockwise. Unconsciously, the tips of his ears turned a faint red, but he merely, without thinking, moved his body closer to hers. After introducing the prayer wheel, Harrison York immediately paid for the one in his hand. Then, following Clara's steps, they both stopped in front of a row of red coral bracelets. She took a string of red coral beads, held Harrison York's hand, and carefully wound it around his wrist, strand by strand. His fair skin and the red coral bracelet complemented each other perfectly. At this moment, Clara also extended her own hand. "Put one on me too." Harrison York, without asking anything, took down a string of the same style and wound it around her wrist. The two hands, one large and one small, placed together, looked very well matched. However, not far away, a person had been standing there for a long time without changing his posture. Many passers-by wondered, wouldn't he feel uncomfortable standing like that for so long? Dawa Doran's eyes were slightly downcast. His hands, hidden under his robe, clenched into fists, then slowly unclenched. His handsome features were inexplicably tinged with a touch of loneliness. The emotions suppressed in his heart for so long burst forth in an instant. Clack! The prayer beads he had been twirling in his hand suddenly broke, scattering one by one onto the floor, making a crisp clattering sound. It was extraordinarily clear in the quiet shop. Clara instinctively turned her head towards the sound, only to see an unexpected person. "Dawa Doran," she murmured subconsciously. Under the slightly dim light, the red mole on his forehead was deeply imprinted in Clara's eyes. Why are you here?" She almost thought she was dreaming, to see Dawa Doran in Beijing. "At this time, shouldn't you be with Sandra Summers? Aren't you two about to get married?" Clara stumbled through these words, only then realizing how dry her voice was. Harrison York instinctively squeezed her hand. The bright red coral bracelets on their two hands deeply stung Dawa Doran's eyes. His brow furrowed tightly, and he quickly explained, "It's not me." While she was puzzled, he immediately continued, "The person Sandra is marrying is not me, it's Felix Morgan. Sandra has always had a boyfriend. I'm just her older cousin with a distant blood relationship." Saying this, Dawa Doran took out a postcard. It was a photo of Sandra and Felix. Chapter 18, in the photo, the two were embracing, smiling brightly at the camera, their intertwined fingers adorned with identical 5-colored woven bracelets. On the back of the photo was written, "Clara, sis, my parents have agreed to my marriage with Felix. You and Dawa Doran must be happy too." It was signed by Sandra Summers and Felix Morgan. "Just her cousin?" Seeing this, Clara Gable froze. Dawa Doran's sincere expression wouldn't lie, and Sandra wouldn't conspire with him to deceive her. Instantly, a wave of shame washed over her. She had actually mistaken Dawa Doran and Sandra for a couple. It was just, if it were only the 5-colored woven bracelet, she wouldn't have misunderstood so deeply. Dawa Doran, as if guessing what she was thinking, said earnestly, "I didn't return to secular life because of Sandra. It was my own unstable mind. Sandra tried to use that as an excuse to deceive her mother that day, but she was found out. Felix asked me to give the 5-colored woven bracelet to Sandra. I still have the bracelet you gave me. The one Sandra has is a failed attempt I made later. This one is the successful one." Saying this, he rolled up his sleeve, and 2 almost identical bracelets were clearly visible on his arm before Clara's eyes. As if this wasn't enough, Dawa Doran continued, somewhat nervously. "Sandra gave me this turquoise earring when we were children. I've always worn it, it's become a habit. I couldn't bear to wear the earring you gave me, so I've kept it safe. I wouldn't give the gifts you gave me to anyone else." Dawa Doran's voice carried a faint tenderness. He slightly loosened his collar, revealing a necklace made of various turquoise earrings worn close to his skin. All the misunderstandings were explained. Clara stood there, stunned. She smiled bitterly, never expecting that one day his tenderness would fall upon her. The words Dawa Doran had spoken replayed in her mind. If all her sadness and heartache over this period had just been a comical misunderstanding, should she go back to how things were? She asked herself honestly. The moment this question arose, she hesitated. Harrison York, standing behind her, had remained silent for a long time, not uttering a word. The current situation, for everyone involved, seemed rather unfavorable. "Clara, are you going to go with him?" Harrison York asked bitterly, his voice extremely strained. Dawa Doran met his gaze for an instant, then quickly looked away, both of them staring at Clara. Both men awaited her answer, and an indescribable, deathly silence spread among the three of them. After a long silence, Clara's eyes flickered and she backed down. "Let me think about it. I'm going back first." Her mind was a mess, almost unable to think rationally. She had never imagined that one day, such a dramatic confrontation would befall her. Clara quickly grabbed her bag and hurried out, even forgetting she hadn't paid for the coral bracelet. "Hey, that young lady, you haven't paid for the bracelet on your hand." The shop owner stood at the door, shouting at her retreating figure. At that moment, Harrison York and Dawa Doran almost simultaneously held out their phone payment screens. "How much? I'll pay for her," the two said in unison. The shop owner looked at the two phones in front of him, looking left and right, unsure whose payment to accept. Both men had an air of unyielding command in their eyes. Finally, after much hesitation, the owner accepted half the money from each of them. Chapter 19, Dawa Doran didn't know where Clara Gable lived, so he could only resort to the crudest method, following her. Although he knew this behavior was wrong, he didn't want to miss her again. He still had so many things he wanted to explain to her, he hadn't had a chance to confess his feelings yet. Seeing Dawa Doran following Clara, Harrison York subconsciously frowned and followed suit. Meanwhile, Cameron Chapman, who was cooped up in his company, was almost dying of anger. He didn't know how many calls he had made to Harrison York, but none had connected. At this point, he finally couldn't take it anymore and called Eleanor Gable. "Mrs. Gable, something came up at the company today. I'm very sorry I couldn't make it to the blind date with your daughter. We can arrange another time." Eleanor Gable was bewildered when she received the call. Seeing that it was already dark and her daughter hadn't sent her any messages, could something have happened? Eleanor's heart pounded with panic. Just as she was about to go out with Arthur Gable to find their daughter, Clara pushed open the door and returned. "Mom, I'm back." Today's blind date went fairly smoothly. Even though she said this, she looked as if she had lost her soul. Her small face was somewhat pale, her eyes listless, completely different from her good mood and state when she had just left. "Clara, that Chapman boy told me today that he had company business and didn't come on the blind date with you. You don't need to lie to Mom. What exactly happened?" Hearing Eleanor's words, Clara's steps faltered. "What? The one I had a blind date with today wasn't Harrison York?" Just as she asked this question, Clara noticed her phone screen light up. A message had arrived 3 minutes ago. Unlocking her phone, she saw Harrison York's message. "Sorry, I deceived you today. To create this reunion with you, I snatched my friend's blind date opportunity." For a moment, Clara couldn't stay angry anymore. He had already explained it to her, judging by the time, before she learned the truth. And after sending this message, Harrison York had also attached Cameron Chapman's photo and detailed information, indicating who her real blind date was for the day. She looked at the information. Although he was excellent, he wasn't her type. Eleanor Gable asked nervously, "Harrison York? How could it be Harrison York? You're so down right now, is it because of him? Tell Mom what grievance you suffered, Mom will help you. Absolutely won't let you suffer any grievance." Seeing Eleanor so agitated she was about to go out, Clara forced a smile. "Mom, I'm fine, I didn't suffer any grievance." Saying this, she even twirled around in front of Eleanor. Only after Eleanor confirmed she wasn't hurt did she relax. However, in these few years, Clara only showed such an expression because of one person. That was Dawa Doran. Eleanor tentatively asked, "Did that Dawa Doran make you sad?" Clara remained silent for a long time, then nodded, and then shook her head. It seemed she couldn't blame him because everything was her own misinterpretation, a misunderstanding. But should she go back to the past? It seemed they could no longer go back. The moment she left Yuncheng, she had already decided to completely let go, because she never wanted to experience that feeling of not being able to see his heart, not being able to grasp his thoughts, ever again. It also seemed she could blame him because he had never once straightforwardly said he liked her. Chapter 20, Love that cannot be felt is not truly love. In these 3 years, Clara Gable had tried. Perhaps she was too foolish, or perhaps too slow, to feel Dawa Doran's love. She pondered for a long time, then finally looked up as if nothing had happened, forcing a light-hearted smile. "Mom, I'm fine. Dawa Doran appeared in Beijing. I saw him today, that's why I'm like this." Hearing this, Eleanor Gable didn't relax much. As someone with experience, she immediately understood why Dawa Doran had come to Beijing. A trace of displeasure flashed in her eyes. Her daughter had pursued him for so long before, and she had never approved. His choosing to return now naturally made Eleanor even more dissatisfied. "Clara, you can't go back and look for him again with our circumstances. What kind of man can't we find? Even if you stay unmarried for life, your father and I can take good care of you," Eleanor pleaded earnestly. Clara merely nodded. She and he had missed each other through twists of fate. Perhaps it proved they had no destiny together. Buddhism emphasizes Yuan and karmic destiny. Maybe they were fated to be apart from the beginning. Why force it then? "Okay, I decided to give up on him long ago. I won't go back down that road." "Mom, don't worry." Clara smiled resolutely. Dawa Doran followed Clara to the entrance of the villa complex, but was stopped by the security guard and not allowed in. Looking at the beautifully landscaped high-end villa complex, a sense of inferiority suddenly arose in his heart. He had always maintained a frugal and ascetic way of life, never caring about these external conditions. Even though his original family background was decent, there seemed to be a certain gap compared to this place. They seemed to be from different worlds. Dawa Doran stood at the main gate of the villa complex, lingering, not leaving. Just then, Harrison York's black Rolls-Royce stopped outside the lakeside villas. The moment he stepped out of the car, an intangible distance was drawn between him and Dawa Doran. Harrison York seemed to belong to the same world as Clara. Dawa Doran thought blankly, a touch of loneliness tinging his dark eyes. "Dawa Doran, is that your name? As far as I know, Clara pursued you for so long. Why did you only respond after she chose to leave? If it were me, I wouldn't bear to see her sad." Harrison York spoke lightly, yet his words were full of provocation. He looked his rival up and down, his heart filled with immense jealousy and bitterness. Dawa Doran had countless times evaded Clara's affection, something Harrison York dreamed of possessing. Hearing this, Dawa Doran's eyes lowered slightly, and he remained silent, not answering. He subconsciously reached for the prayer beads in his hand, only realizing they were gone when his hand met air. His prayer beads had broken long ago. His slender fingers froze, a wave of regret rising in his heart. "I will explain to her, but you don't need to know these things," he replied coldly, not intending to share his thoughts with Harrison York. Harrison York didn't care, just chuckled lightly and got into his car. His smile was, as always, like a spring breeze, but his eyes held a chill. He started the car. The security guard didn't stop him at all, simply letting him through. Clearly, Harrison York was also a resident here. Chapter 21, Dawa Doran stood blankly at the main gate. He didn't know when Clara Gable would come out, nor could he contact her. He could only use this most foolish method, just wait like this until she appeared. It didn't matter. Clara had waited for him for 3 years. He could wait too. Many passing people and cars glanced at Dawa Doran a few times, simply because his aura was aloof, making him seem even more untouched by worldly affairs. Many who saw him subconsciously felt a sense of awe. Therefore, no one tried to talk to him, no one tried to approach and disturb him. Warm sunlight sprinkled on him, as if plating him with a golden sheen. However, a dark cloud drifted from an unknown direction, instantly covering the entire sky above. A few rumbles of thunder shook the heavens, and the sky grew increasingly gloomy, brewing a heavy rain. Dawa Doran still stood there, showing no intention of seeking shelter. It was the security guard who finally couldn't bear to watch any longer and kindly reminded him. "Sir, or master, may I ask if you are here looking for someone? Could you please contact the resident? Ask the resident to inform me and register, otherwise, it's not right for you to keep standing here. It's about to rain heavily. Why don't you go back first? You can come back later to find the person. Or tell me which resident you're looking for and their contact information. I can help you confirm if such a person lives here." Dawa Doran's eyes, which had been gazing into the distance, focused on the guard. "I'm looking for Clara Gable. This is her phone number, but I can't get through. She doesn't want to answer my calls." When he said this, he was incredibly calm. The guard, however, was rather surprised. There was only one family surnamed Gable in Lakeside Villas. The Gable family's daughter had just returned, and he knew a little about it. In the guard's eyes, the man before him was clearly a monk who had transcended worldly affairs. How could he be entangled with Miss Gable? But he didn't say much, just memorized the phone number and tried dialing it. "Hello, may I ask if this is Miss Gable? It's raining outside and there's a man waiting for you. May I ask if he's someone you know? Do you need us to let him in?" Receiving the guard's call, Clara was somewhat surprised. She looked at the weather outside. It had already started to rain lightly. So she said decisively, "Uncle Leo, tell him to leave early. There's no need to look for me. What's past is past. There's nothing more to say. That's all." Guard Leo Jenkins hesitated for a long time before relaying these words to Dawa Doran. He pressed his thin lips tightly together, a clearly visible dejection in his eyes. "Can I talk to her?" Dawa Doran reached out, wanting to take the guard's phone. The guard subconsciously handed it over, but the call on the other end was disconnected. The meaning was self-evident. She didn't want to have any more involvement with him, nor did she want to hear his explanations. She just wanted to end their relationship. Dawa Doran disappointedly retracted his hand, a deep sadness spreading through him. The guard was also somewhat helpless and could only advise him, "You should leave soon. The rain is getting heavier." Dawa Doran clasped his hands together and bowed slightly in thanks. "Thank you, but there's no need. It's good to stand here and wait for her. I can see her house from a distance." Hearing this, the guard looked up. Indeed, he could see the Gable family's villa gate. He sighed deeply and no longer tried to persuade him. Chapter 22, Dawa Doran stood in the rain, letting the cool raindrops roll down his cheeks and drench his clothes. His loose robe, soaked through, clung tightly to his body. The fur collar was drenched, its weight adding an extra burden, yet he seemed to feel nothing. This chill, instead, made him more awake. He gazed at the Gable house in the near distance, silently reciting scriptures in his heart, praying that she would open that door in the next second. After being drenched in the rain for who knows how long, Dawa Doran only felt his body temperature rising, his vision gradually blurring, his body becoming limp and weak. Finally, he swayed precariously and fainted into a puddle of water. The moment before he fainted, he wondered, when did his body become so weak? Would she come to take him away? Dawa Doran didn't know. Seeing this, the on-duty security guard felt utterly helpless and could only dial Clara Gable's number again. "Miss Gable, you'd better come to the guardhouse quickly. That man fainted. I can't leave my post right now. He's someone you know, don't be so heartless." After all, it's a human life. Hearing this, Clara felt extremely frustrated, a wave of anger still simmering within her. She had thought he had come to his senses and left, but she hadn't expected him to neglect his own well-being like this. Clara's face darkened. She quickly found a large umbrella and hurried to the guardhouse. The moment she stepped out of her house, Eleanor Gable called out to her. "Clara, it's good to help others, but don't fall into the same trap twice. Your father and I are waiting for you to come back for dinner." She turned her head, met Eleanor's concerned eyes, and nodded quickly. "Mom, don't worry, I'll be back soon." As soon as she finished speaking, Clara rushed out into the rain with her umbrella. By the time she ran to the guardhouse, it was the first time she had seen Dawa Doran in such a sorry state. Before, he was always in his monk's robe, exceptionally radiant even in a crowd. But now, this lofty flower had fallen into the mortal world, tinged with a worldly air. For a moment, Clara even felt a flicker of doubt. Her pursuit of him these 3 years, was it truly a good thing for him? For both of them, was it truly a good thing? If not for her entanglement, he would still be admired by thousands. Not like now, lying wretchedly in a puddle, incessantly murmuring the name Clara Gable. Clara remained silent for a long time. Just as she was about to call an ambulance, Harrison York appeared behind her, holding a black umbrella. "Let's get him in the car. I'll take you to the hospital," he said considerately, a faint, gentle smile on his face instantly soothing her agitated heart. "Okay, thank you so much." Clara smiled awkwardly. Harrison York was so good-tempered it seemed he couldn't get angry. Hearing her agree, he smiled, his eyes curving. "I'm very happy that you agreed to my help." His gaze was ardent, resting on her, as if about to melt her entirely. It should be me thanking you. Please help me move him into the car." Clara stammered, quickly lowering her head to change the subject. Okay. He didn't tease her further and quickly helped Dawa Doran up, placing him in the back seat. The wet clothes soaked the car seat. Clara belatedly noticed this and was about to apologize. Sore, Harrison York opened the passenger door, motioned for her to sit, and spoke first. No need to apologize to me. It's just a car. I'll send it for cleaning later. Hearing this, Clara didn't refuse any further. Chapter 23, the car moved smoothly forward, and the warm air from the heater woke Dawa Doran in the back seat. He managed to sit up. Looking at the unfamiliar surroundings in the car, he subconsciously became alert. It wasn't until he saw Clara Gable in the passenger seat that he gradually relaxed. Clara, his voice was dry and hoarse, completely lacking its usual clarity, instead carrying a deeper tone. Clara, you finally came to see me? I'm sorry, it was my fault before. I was too slow to realize my feelings for you, too slow to explain everything, causing so many misunderstandings. I know it's a bit late to say these things now, but can you give me another chance? His dark eyes radiated a determined light, fixed intently on Clara. Though every word he spoke felt like tiny blades scraping his throat, causing him immense pain, he still enunciated each word carefully. This time, let me pursue you, okay? Dawa Doran apologized sincerely, unable to maintain his icy mask any longer, his face filled with reluctance. Through the rearview mirror, Clara clearly saw everything, but remained silent for a long time, not giving an answer. She hadn't expected that she had truly pulled him down from his pedestal. Now, he was no different from those men and women obsessed with love. However, this awakening had come too late. Before she left, he had countless opportunities to explain everything to her, to tell her his true feelings, but he hadn't. Clara closed her eyes in disappointment, subconsciously looking out the window, and merely said flatly, "No need, Dawa Doran, you have your own path to walk, but I am not on that path. Also, we've arrived at the hospital." As soon as she finished speaking, Harrison York's car stopped. His eyes darkened slightly, and he slowly said, "Dawa Doran, you should get out of the car." Only when he spoke did Dawa Doran belatedly notice his presence. Although Harrison York hadn't uttered a single provocative word, Dawa Doran inexplicably felt a sense of panic. He was afraid of losing Clara, afraid that the fortune from before would come true, afraid that Clara would choose Harrison York, and Clara sat in the front, looking like a newlywed couple, their atmosphere harmonious. Would they be together? That day they bought a pair of red coral bracelets. Dawa Doran barely dared to think deeply about the meaning. A man and a woman appearing there, not related, coupled with what everyone said about Clara returning for blind dates. Then, clearly, they were blind date partners. So, what was the next step? He barely dared to think further, the jealousy and regret in his heart almost drowning him. Dawa Doran forced a bitter smile. "Clara, don't give up on me, please." He managed to utter this near-begging plea, looking utterly dejected. Clara's eyes were downcast, yet she still said the same words as Harrison York. "Dawa Doran, you should get out of the car." With these words, the light in Dawa Doran's eyes extinguished, inch by inch. "Okay." He didn't continue to pester her, opened the car door with extremely slow movements, and stumbled out into the rain. On his face, hidden by the rain, it was impossible to tell if it was rainwater or tears. The moment he fainted again, his heart ached unbearably. Clara watched Dawa Doran, collapsed in the rain, almost instinctively wanting to get out of the car to help him. But the next second, the security guard at the hospital entrance saw him, quickly came over to support him, and took him into the hospital. Chapter 24, seeing Dawa Doran's figure completely disappear, Clara Gable withdrew her gaze and said calmly, let's go back." A barely perceptible hint of satisfaction flashed in Harrison York's eyes. He quickly responded, "Okay, let's go back." When these words came out of his mouth, they felt inexplicably sweet, as if they were a couple, now going home together. The Rolls-Royce stopped at the Gable family's gate. Clara opened the car door, ready to get out, but then she suddenly turned back to look at him. "Harrison, my mother has made dinner and wants to meet you. Is it convenient?" Harrison York's pupils contracted slightly, somewhat unexpectedly. The meaning behind her words was self-evident. Perhaps she wanted to start something with him. Meeting his beloved's parents for the first time, he still needed to take it seriously. "Really? Of course, it's convenient. However, you go in first. I'll have someone send something over, then I'll come in." he quickly said, his face beaming with uncontrollable joy. Clara looked at him like this, momentarily stunned, then subconsciously smiled along with him. The legendary figure who stood shoulder to shoulder with her in their student days, how could she not remember him at all? Such an outstanding and perfect person, even the her of back then would have been moved by him. However, at that time, she knew very clearly what she wanted. Later, in university, although they often bumped into each other, she didn't think he would truly like her. If Harrison York hadn't revealed everything, she might never have known there was such a person secretly loving her. Clara had already decided to start a new life. Coincidentally, she also had a good impression of him and wasn't resistant. Trying it out seemed like a good idea. As she stepped into the house, she subconsciously covered her face, finding it somewhat flushed and hot. She immediately pressed the cool back of her hand against it to cool down, fanning herself occasionally. Eleanor Gable found this a bit strange and quickly reached out to feel her forehead. "No fever, huh?" Eleanor said, puzzled. "Mom, I've invited Harrison York to our house. He'll be here soon. You and Dad can meet him and see what kind of person he is," Clara said straightforwardly. Eleanor, however, scrutinized her a few times, feeling somewhat uneasy. "Clara, don't just find someone randomly to appease your father and me, just to put our minds at ease. I won't. This time, I'm serious." Seeing her smiling face, Eleanor didn't think much more of it. Not long after, the doorbell rang. Eleanor quickly had the nanny take over the cooking, tidied herself up, and then unhurriedly opened the door. "Hello, Mrs. Gable. These are gifts I brought for you and Mr. Gable." Harrison York felt somewhat nervous, but his expression remained its usual gentle self. Seeing how outstanding he was, Eleanor's face immediately blossomed into a wide smile. The gifts he prepared also hit the spot for Eleanor. Several sets of rare jade jewelry instantly won her heart. When Arthur Gable returned and saw the gifts on the table, he wasn't particularly pleased. It wasn't until he played a few games of chess with Harrison York in the study that he finally beamed with smiles, his face showing admiration. Harrison York's chess style was gentle yet not weak, even subtly strong. He didn't let Arthur win, but one could see his attitude was measured and appropriate. Chapter 25, unlike the harmonious and joyful atmosphere at the dinner table here, Dawa Doran in the hospital room fell into a nightmare for the first time. In his dream, he rejected Clara Gable's affection time and time again, thoroughly breaking her heart. Finally, she gave up on him, returned to Beijing, and chose to marry Harrison York. It wasn't until their wedding day that he suddenly woke up, fully realizing his feelings, only to watch helplessly as she married another. "No, don't, Clara. I love you." Dawa Doran's usually cool face was now covered in a panicked cold sweat. He woke up with a start, quickly sat up, pulled out the IV needle from his hand, and was about to walk out. Only in a half-dreaming, half-awake state would he voice his true feelings. In reality, he had fallen for Clara long ago, he just hadn't realized it himself. Or perhaps he had realized it, but for the sake of faith and perseverance, he had suppressed it time and time again. If Sandra Summers hadn't woken him up, making him firm in his true feelings, perhaps the scene in the dream would really have happened. Buddhist classics believe that dreams are born from the heart, and the scenes and events in dreams reflect people's inner desires and emotions. He had already fallen in love with her. Dawa Doran didn't want the scene from his dream to become reality wearing a patient's gown. He stumbled outwards, his handsome face as pale as paper. A passing nurse saw him like this and quickly stopped him. "Sir, you're not well yet. You can't leave the hospital." "I'm fine," he said coldly, skillfully dodging the nurse who tried to block him. The nurse panicked and quickly called several other nurses to surround him. Dawa Doran wasn't fully recovered. Despite his good physical constitution, he was still stopped. Back in the hospital room, he stared blankly at the liquid in the IV drip, counting the time. Just then, his phone screen suddenly lit up. "Dawa, Felix and I have set our wedding date. When are you and Clara, sis, coming back? Maybe we can even get married at the same time." It was a voice message from Sandra. Dawa Doran, with extraordinary slowness, picked up his phone and replied with a voice message. "We might not be able to go back. She doesn't love me anymore. She really has given up on me." His words were choked and desperate. Even Sandra, upon receiving the voice message, remained silent for a long time before calling. "Clara, sis, she loves you so much. How could this happen? Did you explain those misunderstandings to her? Did you tell her that Felix and I are getting married?" Sandra's heart was in her throat, terrified that she had affected the relationship between Dawa Doran and Clara. "Why don't I come find you both? If Clara doesn't believe it, I'll explain it to her clearly. It must be that you're not good with words, it must be." "No need," Dawa Doran interrupted her meaningless words. "It's my fault. I disappointed her too much. We can start over. Sandra, send me a wedding invitation. I want to invite Clara to attend." Perhaps, after returning to Yuncheng, there would be a turning point, but the prerequisite was that Clara was willing to go back. Dawa Doran hung up the phone, staring blankly at the white ceiling. The smell of disinfectant lingering in his nostrils made him uneasy. He always felt as if something unforeseen was happening. The nurse came to take his temperature. After confirming his fever had subsided, she finally agreed to his discharge. Chapter 26. After recovering, Dawa Doran received Sandra Summers' wedding invitation. He tidied himself up, changed into a well-tailored suit, and went to Lakeside Villas. "Oh, it's you, that young man from Yuncheng." This time, guard Leo Jenkins was quite surprised to see him dressed like this, racking his brains for a long time. If it weren't for that familiar scalp, just beginning to sprout a short layer of stubble, Uncle Leo might not have recognized him so easily. Without his robes, Dawa Doran didn't look out of place in a suit. The buzz cut close to his scalp added a touch of wildness to his demeanor. However, it couldn't overshadow his inherent coolness. Uncle Leo felt a sense of awe, and not wanting a repeat of the previous incident, let him in. "Thank you." Dawa Doran subconsciously clasped his hands in thanks, then, as if remembering something, quickly lowered them. When he reached the Gable family's door, he felt somewhat apprehensive. His hand had just touched the door before he could knock when it opened from the inside. "Clara?" His voice grew weaker and weaker, because the person who opened the door was not Clara Gable, but Alina Gable. "Who are you?" Just as she asked this, Alina looked him up and down and instantly remembered, her face darkening. "You must be Dawa Doran." No other reason, because men with a red mole on their forehead and such short hair were rare, and his aura was also very unusual. Seeing Alina recognize him, Dawa Doran was about to affirm it when Alina spoke again. She smiled gently and gracefully, but the words that came out were chilling to the extreme. "Dawa Doran, my daughter pursuing you was wrong. She has already figured things out and given up on you, so there's no need for you to continue pestering her. Moreover, Clara already has a fiancé. You should go back as soon as possible. This place is not suitable for you, and there's no need for you to force yourself into our lives for Clara's sake. After all, from the very beginning, you were not from the same world. Forcing yourselves closer will only lead to mutual destruction." The gift Dawa Doran was carrying in his hand, at some point, had fallen to the ground. Even though it contained some precious herbs and jewelry, Alina didn't care in the slightest. "I'm sorry, it was my fault before. I just want a chance to start over." He managed to say these words, his heart filled with extreme bitterness. The moment he heard Clara had a fiancé, his vision turned black, wave after wave. Even though he didn't believe it in his heart, he couldn't deceive himself. They could no longer go back, and now, even the chance to start over was about to disappear. Dawa Doran forcibly ignored what Alina said about the fiancé, only looking intently into the house. "Mrs. Gable, I want to see Clara to give her something. We can't just end like this." As soon as he finished speaking, before Alina could refuse, Clara walked over slowly, arm in arm with Harrison York. "Dawa Doran, we've come to an end here. If you have anything else to say it all at once. After this, let's not meet again." Clara said seriously, her hand by her side intertwined with Harrison York's, giving him a sense of security. Dawa Doran stared intently at their hands, his eyes almost turning red. "Clara, Sandra is getting married. This is her wedding invitation. Will you come back with me to attend? She wants your blessing." Chapter 27, the festive red invitation bore the names of Sandra Summers and Felix Morgan. She didn't hesitate and accepted it directly. At this moment, a spark of hope rekindled in Dawa Doran's heart. However, the words Clara Gable uttered next completely shattered his heart. "Harrison, would you be willing to attend a friend's wedding with me?" Harrison York smiled faintly and nodded, his hand tightening slightly around hers, as if staking his claim. "Of course. Wherever you want to go, I'll accompany you. I also want to see the scenery that captivated you for 3 years. Dawa Doran's face instantly turned deathly pale, his expression extremely strained. Clara, I was hoping you would come back with me. He didn't finish, just murmured her name. Finally, he managed to utter a single, difficult okay. Clara and Harrison exchanged a glance, and she suddenly said, "After attending Sandra's wedding, we should probably prepare for our own, shouldn't we?" "I'm already looking at dates," he replied affirmatively. Hearing this, Dawa Doran felt as if his heart was being pierced by knives, the pain making it almost impossible to breathe. "Clara, can you not marry him?" He almost whispered these words, but she didn't hear clearly, only glancing at him with confusion. "What did you say just now?" Dawa Doran shook his head with extreme slowness. "Nothing." The Clara of the past would always remember every word he said, while he was the one who deliberately ignored them. Now, everything was reversed. 5 days later, Clara prepared a gift and went to the airport with Harrison York to meet Dawa Doran. Previously, she seemed to have endless topics to discuss with Dawa Doran, eager to share every interesting thing in her life. Now, the two were speechless when facing each other. Clara only chatted occasionally with Harrison, their atmosphere comfortable and harmonious, as if there was no room for anyone else. They didn't even notice that Dawa Doran had been silent for a long time. Perhaps Clara noticed, but only thought he was like before, indifferent to her chatter, only caring about the scriptures before him. On the plane, Clara sat by the window, Harrison York beside her, while Dawa Doran was some distance away. Just as he was about to ask a flight attendant for a blanket for Clara, Harrison beat him to it. Harrison knew her preferences, taking care of everything down to the smallest detail. Dawa Doran sat not far away, staring at them, lost in thought. He seemed unable to remember her preferences, let alone take care of her like that. Conversely, she remembered even his smallest habits clearly. Dawa Doran felt utterly dejected. When the plane landed, Sandra and Felix were already waiting at the airport. It was Harrison's first time in Yuncheng. Although his physical condition was good, he still felt a bit oxygen deprived. Clara quickly bought some rhodiola and an oxygen tank, anxiously watching over him. "Harrison, are you okay? We should have taken the train. It would have been easier for you to acclimatize." Harrison's face was pale. He leaned weakly against her and slowly shook his head. "I'm fine, it's not serious. I'll be okay after a while, don't worry." Even though he said this, Clara continued to monitor his condition closely. Dawa Doran stood silently beside them, like a humble shadow. Sandra and Felix, witnessing this scene, also fell silent for a long time. It was the first time she had seen Clara, sis, so concerned about someone other than Dawa. Sandra looked worriedly at Dawa Doran, thinking this. Chapter 28, Dawa Doran just shook his head, saying nothing. Throughout this journey, he had seen enough of their mutual concern for each other. It was a tenderness that he and she had never shared. Perhaps Harrison York was indeed more suitable for her, Dawa Doran thought in despair. Clara Gable had already left the school, so naturally she couldn't stay in the dormitory anymore. Just as she was preparing to pay for a hotel room, Sandra Summers spoke up. "Clara, sis, I'm getting married tomorrow. I still have things I want to tell you. Why don't you stay with me?" "Mr. York can stay at Dawa's place." Seeing Clara look worriedly at Harrison York, Sandra wheedled, shaking her arm. "Clara, sis, I'm getting married tomorrow. Just stay with me this once." Harrison York nodded understandingly. "Don't worry, you go, I'll be fine." After speaking, he looked deeply at Dawa Doran, a provocative curl to his lips. Since he had said so, Clara could only agree. She let Sandra pull her away to her home. As soon as she put down her luggage, Sandra immediately pulled out a photo album. "Clara, sis, look, these are photos of Dawa and me from childhood to now. Weren't we very similar when we were little?" The two children in the photos were adorable and snow white, indeed bearing some resemblance. "Yes, you do look quite alike," Clara nodded. Hearing this, Sandra became even more excited, even finding photos of their fathers and diaries her father had written. From those, it was indeed evident that they were related by blood. Clara's face, which had held a faint smile moments ago, gradually sobered. "Sandra, the fact that Dawa Doran and I are not together has nothing to do with you. I should have given up long ago. Besides, I'm very happy now. You'll wish me well, right?" Sandra remained silent for a long time before finally nodding with difficulty. On the wedding day, Sandra wore a golden red wedding dress. her exquisite makeup amplifying her beauty to the extreme. Countless gold and jade jewels adorned her waist, making her shine brilliantly. As Sandra nervously took that step, Clara pressed a pair of hand-braided lover's knots into her palm. Dawa Doran walked in, his gaze lingering on her for a moment, then shifting to Sandra. "The wedding is starting. We can set off." Clara pretended not to notice his glance and joined the crowd in presenting red ceremonial scarves to Sandra. Sandra stood beside Felix Morgan, the two exchanging a sweet smile. Marrying the person you love truly brought happiness. So, would her wedding be this joyful too? Clara thought to herself. Just then, a large hand enveloped hers, then finger by finger, separated hers and intertwined with them intimately. She subconsciously looked up. It was indeed Harrison York. He whispered in her ear, "Our wedding will be even grander, even happier." Clara saw the seriousness in his eyes and nodded with a smile. The wedding proceeded smoothly, with everyone singing and dancing. Clara also pulled Harrison's hand and joined the crowd, laughing freely. Dawa Doran sat in a corner far from the crowd, observing their happiness. None of this, from beginning to end, belonged to him. He clutched the pair of lovers' knots tightly in his hand, then placed them over his heart, as if, in his heart, he and Clara had also been married once. Night deepened. The lively crowd dispersed one after another. In the end, everyone had left, leaving only Dawa Doran. Clara, slightly intoxicated, fell into a sweet dream. Coming here again, she hadn't expected such a completely different state of mind. However, she didn't know that a mournful bone flute had played throughout the night, as if narrating a woeful story. 2 days later, no one saw Dawa Doran again. Clara and Harrison prepared to leave, and Sandra was reluctant to see them go. "Can't you stay and play for a few more days? There are still so many scenic spots you haven't seen. I'll take you to see them, okay?" Clara shook her head helplessly. "Sandra, we still have work. We'll come play again when we have the chance." She held Harrison's hand and walked towards the security checkpoint. Just then, Sandra looked extremely anxious, constantly glancing behind her. The moment before Clara entered security, Sandra quickly grabbed her hand. "Clara, sis, can you wait a little longer, please? Dawa Doran hasn't come yet. He definitely still wants to see you one more time. Just wait a little longer. Just a moment." As she spoke, Sandra kept looking outwards. Harrison York checked the time, his brow furrowed slightly. "Clara, Sandra, we can't wait any longer. We'll have a chance to meet again in the future. We have to catch our flight." Clara also nodded in agreement. Sandra, having no other choice, had to let go. They waited until their plane took off, but Dawa Doran never appeared. However, they didn't know that in the monastery with red tiles and white walls, Dawa Doran knelt before the Buddha statue, confessing his sins over and over again. After an unknown amount of time, a monk in a red robe once again shaved his head. The moment he donned the monk's robe again signified that Dawa Doran had truly severed all worldly ties, transcending the mundane. He closed his eyes, twirling the prayer beads in his hand, silently chanting scriptures for Clara's well-being. From then on, all her joys and sorrows had nothing to do with him. She was doing well, she just didn't need his love anymore, that was all. 2 months later, in Beijing, thousands of miles away from Yuncheng, when the Gable and York families held their wedding, countless platforms broadcasted this grand event. Even Dawa Doran in the Buddhist hall heard about it. Suddenly, as if sensing something, he stopped twirling the prayer beads in his hand. The two lovers' knots tied around his neck with a red string suddenly fell to the ground. The red string had broken. A gust of wind blew past, and the two lovers' knots were swept up by the wind, buried in the butter lamp that belonged to him. Dawa Doran subconsciously tried to stop them with his hand, but was powerless. Looking at the two fleeting lovers' knots, a trace of suppressed sorrow crossed his face, only to return to an appearance of desirelessness the next moment. Like a phoenix flown from its high tower and clouds obscuring a lover's mountain. He murmured this fortune softly, as if bidding farewell to someone, but no one heard him. A few devout pilgrims entered. He, however, abruptly walked out of the monastery, gazing alone at the azure sky, lost in thought. Clara must be very happy now.